host, Sabrina Salvati. Dooby-dooby-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome to SABBYSabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is JonStasevich. He is running for president as an independent. John, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's really my pleasure. I recently became aware of you, actually. I've been a Patreon member for Jimmy Dore for quite some time, Richard Wolff, Status Quo, and then I saw you. And I was trying to find something that I could disagree with you with. I couldn't. It was, wow, where has this woman been? So it's my pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much and welcome. So our first question that I have for you is, number one, why are you running for president for 2024? And also, can you explain to everyone why you decided to run as an independent?
Sure. Well, I've been an activist my entire life, going back to the 70s in Vietnam War. I'll explain more about that later. I've been bothered by the corruption in our political system. It's unfair, it's unjust. We'll get into capitalism a little bit. But I didn't ever decide, I never thought of myself as a political candidate, never wanted to run. I'm a working class guy, worked my entire life. Started in 7th grade delivering newspapers, a 7-day-a-week paper and a special edition on Sunday, so 8 deliveries. Worked in gas stations. I worked in automotive plants, spray painting cars, and as a production supervisor. I got a degree in automotive technology a long time ago. Anyway, then I transitioned into another career, got a degree in digital electronics, worked for a computer company. Then I got a degree in nursing, became a nurse. I've got a real long background. And in the middle there, as a working class person, I've experienced everything that working class people experience. Ford, for the first time in history in the late 70s, during those Carter years when we had double-digit inflation and double-digit unemployment, they were painful. They laid off an entire shift of their truck plant. They'd never done that. So I lost my job, no fault of my own. I had a mortgage. I had kids. And I was responsible for. I was going to my neighbors collecting newspapers and paper to recycle so I could put food on the table. So I've been through it all. I've also been very successful in software sales for about 15, 20 years. I was a sales executive. I then became a nurse on neurology unit at U of M. So I've kind of done a little of everything, but I've really focused on human health, well-being, human psychology, mostly for my children's sake. And so that's what I've been busy doing my entire life. But I've been following politics, and I knew about the problems we have in this country with our corrupted system. The duopoly has a monopoly on political power. They've always had a monopoly on the presidency. And that's the people's house. So I decided I needed to run as an independent. I didn't want to, but nobody else was stepping up to the plate. A lot of people were talking, well, I'll research it, I'll think about it. I had to get engaged. So I felt obligated to, my children are successful, they're on their own. One is a speech pathologist. She works in the Farmington school system. She takes care of needy children. And my son is a physicist. He's a biophysicist, actually, professor at Colorado State. And he's done things no one's ever done before. He developed a device to see translation happening in live cells real time. So my children are healthy, happy, productive. I've done my job. I've got 5 wonderful grandchildren. And it was time for me to move on to the next thing. So I'm comfortably retired up here in Boyne, Michigan, Boyne City, actually. But watching the way the nation was going, watching all the needless pain and suffering in the working class, I just felt obligated to get involved and do something. I'm 71 years old August 5th. So if elected, I'd be 73 years old. And for the first time in history, the American people would actually have a working class person that associates with them, that isn't living in a distant bubble, that can't relate to real life as a working class person in America, having to raise a family, having to raise children, concerned about our health, concerned about our neighbors and our community, and watching the corruption increase year after year after year. So that's what prompted me to do it. And the reason I went for as an independent is because, like most Americans, I've been disgusted by both parties. My personal belief is that we have one corporate corrupted party, oligarchy corrupted party, however you want to look at it, disguised as a two-party system for the purposes of dividing the working class voters against our own common interests.
That's right.
And across the political spectrum, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, we have families, we have mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles. Our children's health, well-being is first in most people's mind. And that means we have to have economic security. The other thing that I've watched over the years, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, or in a suburb of Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. So I watched the race riots. I've watched racism my entire life, and it's never disappeared. I always knew as a white male that I was privileged. So even though I struggled, I knew there were people in our community, non-white people, who had greater struggles than I did. And I always felt that that was something that we have to deal with. And we have to meet it head on, right? It's socioeconomic. It's a matter of our history. And so the timing is also another factor. Lately, with the inflation, with the pandemic and the failures we've had there, give you an example of what I mean failure with the pandemic. China, 1.4 billion people. In all of China, including Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the outer areas, they had 20,000 deaths, okay? The United States, 332 million people, I think, according to the last census, exceeding 1 million deaths. That's a failure. That's a failure. Economically, people living pay to pay, poverty, homelessness, people living in the streets, families living out of cars and tents. It's just absolutely outrageous. The pain level has finally hit working class Americans that are a little higher up in the economic scale, middle class people who had a pretty comfortable life. It was easy for them because of their own personal comfort, drive down the street, see homeless people in tents, and kind of look the other way.
Yep.
Right? But now the pain is hitting home. So the timing is right. And it's time for Americans to unite. We can't succeed as a people, as a nation, unless we're united. And we're more divided than ever. And yes. I think you know that. And of course, this is the purpose of the political theater, to divide us. They want to divide us down the race lines, gender lines, red versus right, left versus, or red versus blue, right versus left. Those are all concocted things. And then the wedge issues. They're always coming up with wedge issues. We are all human beings, and we're all related. And we know that by DNA evidence. We're all cousins, for Christ's sakes. So when we talk about the health of our families that we all share and a concern for our children, that's something that we have in common, and we shouldn't allow these two major parties to divide us the way they have. So I felt that the only way that we could unite the American people across party lines, get the independents, who basically a lot of them dropped out altogether because they're disgusted, back into the system, was to have an independent president, someone not connected to a political party, not connected to corporate interests or any other interests, funded by the American people, supported by the American people, there to serve the American people rather than being served by the American people.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Can you explain to everyone your political strategy? And I ask this question because there's been a lot of hate against third parties recently. Also, I don't know if you've seen this, but people are blaming Jill Stein and Susan Sarandon again on Twitter for the reason why things are the way that they are. In my recent interview with Ro Khanna, he blamed Jill Stein voters, although I would argue that even if you gave Jill Stein's votes to Hillary Clinton still loses if you're looking at the numbers there. So there's always someone pointing the finger at the third party candidates for the reason that the Democrat candidate or the Republican candidate is not winning. Can you explain to everyone your political strategy in running for president?
Well, of course, the first part is having people recognize the history. Okay, so as an example, we saw Bernie Sanders build a movement and then abandon it to support a major party, a corporate corrupted figure, both Hillary Clinton and then Joe Biden. Well, for the progressive groups that supported him, that blew their mind. It was clear to me, I don't know what's in his heart, but I know what he did. And what he did is exactly what you said. He abandoned his movement. I'm not going to do that. That's number one. Okay. And this campaign that I'm conducting, I want to make sure everybody knows this is not about me. This is truly about us. I voted for Jill Stein. I supported Jill Stein's court case against the FEC. And so I've gone the third party route. I love Jill Stein and I agree with the third party platforms. The only problem is they have not been successful. So as an independent, I'm going to have the ability to reach out to the progressive groups, which kind of naturally agree with Bernie's agenda, with Jill Stein's agenda. That should not be a hard sell. I'm going to reach out to the non-white community. They have been most victimized by the system economically. Okay? And so I know it's going to be hard for them because the way the system works now is everybody is voting out of fear.
Yes.
So if you're a Republican, you're voting for Donald Trump, not necessarily because you agree with everything he stands for or anything like that, but out of fear of what the Democrats may do. Okay. And if you're a Democrat, it works the other way around. You're voting for Joe Biden, not because of Joe Biden's policies or his history and in Congress, but because you fear, say, Donald Trump. Everybody's voting out of fear. We see that hasn't worked. Ever since Ronald Reagan, it's been a downhill slide. Richard Wolff, which you've had on here many times, talks about the economics. Yep. The economics are the driver for everything in a capitalist society. We have to face some facts about our economic system. For working class people, it's a failure. Okay.
That's right.
It is inefficient. It's ineffective. It's destructive. It's unstable. It's unjust. And it's unsustainable. That's a failure. And, now I can understand why upper middle class people or the oligarchy might want to, the oligarchy certainly, they want to maintain it. They want to maintain their position of power and control and wealth. But for working class people, it hasn't worked. So for me, at this point, with our history of swinging back and forth, of trying third parties, everything that hasn't worked, I think the American people are ready to start thinking about another option. Okay. The presidency, that is the most powerful political position in the nation, maybe in the free world, maybe in the entire world. That should be owned by the American people. I think that they can, at this point in time, possibly overcome those fears and actually for once vote for what they really want. Vote for what they love. Vote for what they know is right. They have to look into their own hearts. They have to start becoming more compassionate and loving and taking care of one another. We've got to quit pointing the finger at each other because it's not us controlling the system. As a matter of fact, the study that came out of Princeton basically demonstrated that working class people have absolutely, well, statistically zero say in legislative processes. So we get nothing that we want, nothing. You've got nothing to lose. As a nurse, I've studied healthcare. Raising children, early on, I started studying psychology, and I was interested in cognitive psychology and human developmental psychology and behavioral psychology. I needed to know that so that I could raise healthy, productive kids. I had to work hard to support them to get them through college. They came through college without debt. That's how they were able to start their lives, raise their children. I don't just want that for my kids. I want it for every kid. So when I heard the words, which were really used by the no child left behind, that's not, when I think of no child left behind, I mean absolutely no child left behind. I don't understand our education system. Why don't we have a public education system that everybody has to attend? When everyone has to attend the same system, we don't have a tiered system. Guess what? Everyone's going to support it. When the wealthy have to send their kids to a public school, just like the rest of us, they're going to support that school.
Yeah.
Right? We have a tiered system. So apparently in our current society, everything is tiered based on economics. And so the poorer you are, the less you get. The
That's
marketplace and capitalism, Richard Wolff's explained this many times. We know how unjust and unfair that is. When you put it into the marketplace, the one with the most money always gets what they want, and the ones that have nothing always lose. Matter of fact, even Socrates looked at the market and said, this is outrageous. It's a disaster for humanity, because capitalism in a marketplace automatically puts people in contention with one another. So you've got a person on one side that wants to purchase for the lowest price, a guy on the other side wants to sell for the highest price. That's conflict. That's built-in inherent conflict, and that's what capitalism is. He knew that was unhealthy for a civilized society. He knew it divided people. Now, what would you do if you had a system, an economic system, that instead of promoting competition and tension between the players, promoted cooperation, collaboration, organization? The Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland. A guy named Lawrence Krauss is a physicist, one of the guys that I love to follow. He talks about this all the time. This is the most complicated machine ever built by mankind. And it took thousands of scientists from hundreds of countries speaking dozens of different languages. When you cooperate, collaborate, and organize, that's what we can accomplish. That's what we can accomplish as a society. And the only thing that's stopping us is an oligarchy that wants to maintain the status quo, and our own people who have been victimized by propaganda and political theater for so long that they don't know which way is up. They can't even vote in their own interest. That's what I want. So my strategy is to change what people believe. The common belief is, oh, you're an independent. You can't win. It's impossible to win. That's merely a belief. And we know cognitive human psychology says, the premise is that we don't act in accordance with the truth. We act in accordance with the truth as we believe it. So if I believe you can't win, why would I ever work to help you win, right? So my challenge is to change belief, to empower people, to tell them, you can make the choice. We have the power. Just think about it from a mathematical perspective. Mathematically, 99% of us are out there, and then there's 1% that make all of the decisions that impact every one of our lives. 99 to 1. Who do you think has the power? We do. And we have to recognize that and realize that we can control our destiny. We don't have to have a tiny group of people making all of the major decisions, the economic decisions that impact our lives. Okay? So that's my challenge. And of course, given the corruption in the system, and you had people on who have tried to get ballot access, and these two parties have. I want to build such a mass movement and get so many people signing up to work with me to get me on the ballot that there's no question. They can't stand up against 99% of the people. They can do a lot of things, but when we're united, when we start working together, when we stop allowing them to divide us, we're going to win. They know it, and I know it, and I just have to convince the people. So mathematically, if I can convince 10 people to join me, and they can convince 10 people to join, and those 10 can convince 10. 8 generations down the line, that's 100 million votes. 100 million. Joe Biden won with what, 83 million?
Yep. Just
8 generations. Word of mouth. Everybody knows 10 people. You could be standing in line at the grocery store and talking to somebody about justice. You know, my 5-year-old granddaughter understands justice. When things don't go right, she knows it. And we do too. Even though our system has got us so fouled up and so turned against one another, not trusting one another, not loving one another. All of the things that we know in our heart, we learned before we were 5. You learned it in kindergarten, for Christ's sake. Why is it we forgot it? That's been by design.
Yep.
And we know. So when you say, what is my strategy? That's a part of it. When I get there, here's something I should tell you. During the Vietnam era, there was a draft. And they had a lottery. My number came up as 58. So every birth date, every date of the year was assigned a number. My birthday, August 5th, was number 58, if I remember correctly. In other words, I was going to be going into the military. Okay. I wanted to serve my country. But I was conflicted by having to kill other working class people who, in my view, have never done anything wrong. And I know Smedley Butler, a major general back during World War I, explained to all of us that all of the wars that he participated in were simply for profit. Wars for profit, not to make life better for Americans, maybe a few Americans, to make them wealthier, but for the mass of people, no. And he stood up in front of the White House after World War I. The soldiers were promised compensation because they were low paid while they were in the military and they sacrificed, right? They come back and so they end up going to standing in front of the White House in an encampment to try to get the money that they were promised. Smedley Butler stood by their side. And they sent in the troops to disband those veterans. And veterans are not treated well today. Same darn thing, right? They sacrifice. So I did go into the military and I became a conscientious objector. I was about 12 months in the military as a conscientious objector. That's activism. When you're by yourself in enemy territory, you might think of it. If you want to be a conscientious objector from within the military, everybody's against you. I came out after 12 months with an honorable discharge because I stood by the principles, because I knew they couldn't make me do something that I didn't want to do. And I was willing to pay the price. Okay. So I have the tenacity. I've demonstrated that. I'll be an activist president. I'll organize the working class. We will get what we want. Healthcare. I'm going to use that one issue to explain what I mean. Bernie Sanders talked about Medicare for all. I want Medicare for all, but I want it to expand it. I want it to include dental, mental care, optical, and auditory. Human health, you have to look at all the aspects of human health. And dental, if we ignore that, we know you can end up with heart disease, cardiovascular, all kinds of things that can go wrong. So we need a comprehensive single payer plan. Okay. Germany provides health care to each and every one of their citizens through the entire lifespan. okay? And they do it for about $6,000 per capita. 6,000. They are rated always near the top. Every study that's ever been done looking at healthcare systems throughout the world, Germany's always rated very high. There's other examples, but I'm using Germany. The United States, on the other hand, you know, we spend per capita $11,600. Let's just round it off and let's call it a $6,000 per capita difference. Okay, so we spend $6,000 more, and guess where we fall when it comes to objective healthcare outcomes? Very lowest in the industrialized world. So we are the lowest performer and we pay the highest price, a delta of $6,000. We have 332 million people. Let's take that $6,000 times 300 million, just to round it off. 3 times 6 is 18, right? How much money would we save simply by copying Germany? $18 trillion every decade. 18 trillion. Our national debt just exceeded 30 trillion. So they have said, oh, well, we can't afford Medicare for all. We can't afford not to do it. Just a darn lie. And this information is public. Anyone can get this. So, and I went, I guess it was Nina Turner and Cornel West. I met them at a union hall in Detroit during Bernie Sanders' campaign. I worked with him in 2015. And he would say Medicare for all. The media would come out and say, we can't afford to do it. How are we going to afford it? How are we going to pay for it? And so I went to Nina and Cornell and said, go back to him and tell them it's a no-brainer. It'll pay for itself and give us money back. So I had to explain that to them. You know, he never really used it effectively the way I just did. And I have to wonder why. So I think that Bernie Sanders was actually controlled opposition. He was effective as a sheepdog, pulling voters into the duopoly, into the Democratic Party, keeping them intact. They have other players like Joe Manchin. They always have someone to blame. He doesn't mind taking the blame. He's one of the wealthiest senators there. Fine,
Nope.
I'll take the blame for all that, for all those millions. Let them call me a rat, you know. But somehow we never get what we want, do we?
That's right. I mean, it's you know, it's interesting too with Bernie Sanders, because one of the things that I think really frustrated me about him during his campaign, even though I supported Bernie Sanders, donated to Bernie Sanders, I was really frustrated with the fact that he would not call out the DNC. He would not call out the media when he knew the media was smearing him and was lying about Medicare for all. Bernie Sanders would not call it out. Even after he lost, at that point, I said, what do you have to lose? Why don't you call it out and tell people how the DNC cheated, what they did in reference to you and Hillary Clinton, what they did in reference to you and Joe Biden, how they were able to bend the rules so that Mike Bloomberg could join the debates last minute. Bernie Sanders would not do it. And I had to ask myself at this point, even if they're going to push him out of the Senate, whatever, be it, because at this point, I'm like, Bernie Sanders can just retire. He's a millionaire. Yeah. He can just retire. So why was he so afraid? Why would he not speak out? Why would he not push back on the Democratic Party? So for me, there's a lot of frustration when it comes to Bernie Sanders, because you don't get to tell people that you're starting a revolution and you're starting a movement, and then you just walk away from it after you lose and you tell us to go vote for Joe Biden and join the corporate Democrats.
Right. That's right. Yeah, so we know now, don't we? I think that the evidence is pretty clear. That's what I like about you, is you're completely objective and rational. No matter, like, I'm like you, I supported him and I funded his campaign as to the best of my ability. And I went door to door, I manned the phones, I was in his Detroit field office. I was as disappointed as anyone, and you know, and after that, we saw the progressive movement fall apart. Some went to the Green Party. Some just dropped out altogether in total disgust, right? And I'm asking people, don't do that. You have to stay engaged. The only one, we're the only ones that can change it. We can't expect any change that's going to help us to come out of the oligarchy that wants to maintain the status quo. It's up to us to do it. So I'm asking people to support me. Now, not just me either. One of the other things that I'm going to do strategically, I'm not going to pick. Whoever supports me, my base, is going to democratically pick my presidential candidate. Because I'm an old man. I may not be around that long. And we need someone that's smart and young and committed. So that's another part of my strategy. I want to pick my cabinet way, way, way before, so we know what we're getting. You vote for me, you're not just voting for me, you're voting for my cabinet. I would love to see Richard Wolff, Secretary of Treasury.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as an example. So that's another part of the strategy. I want to engage young people. You had Terrell Ventura on. He talked about his dad's campaign and what was successful. Mm-hmm. What did he do? He went to the colleges. I want to learn from him. He went to the colleges. I want to hit every major college in the United States. Now, for those that can afford to fund my campaign, I don't really want your money, but I do want your votes. But for me to travel, people are going to have to come up with some money to get me from place to place. I'm just a working class guy. I mean, I'm doing okay, but I'm on Social Security. I've got a small pension, you know. So for those that can afford, I'll ask them to help me get out there and get the word out. So I'm going to ask people to, I'm going to start with a core of highly committed people and hopefully use all of the mechanisms that have been successful for Bernie, for Jesse Ventura, and there have been other progressive leaders along the way who've done things that worked out very well. I'm getting a lot of volunteer work. I'll ask people to volunteer. You can't afford your money. Can you volunteer your time? I need help getting on a ballot. So on my website, you can go there and there's a form, help John get on a ballot in all 50 states. Okay. So people can volunteer and say, I'll keep the ballot at my home so I can go out and sort by state through the database. And I can publish out to each state when it comes time to sign their petitions or whatever the rules are. As you know, each state is different. But when it comes time, I can say, these are all of the addresses in your state where the form, where the petition is for you to sign. So I'm asking people to volunteer to get those petitions, keep them at their house, and then bring them back together and tabulate them. So I want to get a person in each state to manage each state. And then I'll have some national people or regional people to kind of coordinate and organize. So organization, the reason I started and announced so early is organization. The other thing I would say, and nobody in my family wanted me to do this. Let me say that. They wanted me, hey, Dad, stay up there, play with the grandkids, let's all have fun. You got a great life, you worked hard. But I couldn't sit back because I know the answers. I know what the answers are. And I'm a good communicator, and I think I can reach people, and I talk to people from all walks of life, all different political leanings. And I find that if I engage them, mostly they listen and they do see this is a good way to go. So I think it's not a hard sell. This is not a hard sell, getting an independent person in the White House that will serve the American people.
Yes, I think people are upset with both. I've spoken to so many frustrated people, and this started last year, even actually after Force the Vote. That's when there was like another split that happened on the left, but people were frustrated then, and then people were more frustrated when unemployment issues last year, and then now with inflation, people are just really angry. And I think this is the time to really we need to do something different. We need to go with a different strategy because we've tried putting progressives in the Democratic Party. And I want to get your opinion about them. they haven't been fighting for us. They've been voting along with the corporate Democrats, whether it's giving billions of dollars to Ukraine, whether it's voting for NATO.
Right.
They've been voting right along with them. So they're careerists at this point. I don't trust them at all. But I do want to ask, because I did talk about this with Cynthia McKinney recently, and I'm wondering, do you think that there is some type of, I know there's pressure on them, but do you think there is something that's kind of being held over their head that's preventing them from really getting in there and fighting for us? And I asked that question because Cynthia McKinney told me recently she wonders if she would have been able to push back and say no like she did when she was in office, if she would be able to do that today with Nancy Pelosi. So do you think there's something that they're holding over their heads, or you think they're just careerist?
You know, there's one way to find out. Put me in the White House. Because I'll find out if they want to work with me. Job one for me in the White House is get the money out of politics. I want publicly funded elections. I want zero money going out. Anyone that everybody knows money corrupts. Most of the CEOs that give millions of dollars to these candidates, they give to both parties because no matter who wins, they win. They always win, right? That's the oligarchy. They would fire their own employees who took money from vendors to get contracts. So they know it's corrupt. They know it's corruption, you know. But when it serves their bottom line, because they're capitalists and profit is the only part in the equation that they care about is profit. So wherever there's profit, that's where they go. It doesn't matter if it destroys the planet. It doesn't matter if it destroys families and puts thousands of people or millions of people in unemployment lines. You know, profit is, and Richard Wolff talks about that all the time. This is a class war.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, this is a class war. We can organize. We can unite. We see that people are starting to unionize. The question I have, I want to make unions obsolete. I want to move beyond capitalism. I want to spread ownership to the workers, to the communities. So there should be community members on the board, worker representation on the board that are elected by the workers. And then customers should even have a say. We can redesign our economic system to work for everyone. It doesn't have to be this way. It's not like we don't have the intelligence, like we can't get creative enough to figure out, oh, how are we going to make this work for everyone? No, it's not rocket science, you know. It's like in your family. You don't have special people in your family. You don't sit down to dinner table. Well, Auntie, you're not all that special, so we'll give you a carrot or two, but we're going to eat the steak and potatoes. Thank you very much. No, it doesn't work that way, does it? So when we sit down at the dinner table in our family, we all sit down together. We all eat together. We take care of one another. And that's the way society, that's the way civil society. And we have to go beyond our own national interests. We have to, well, I'm anti-war, obviously, all violence. We learned long ago that violence is not an acceptable method for resolving differences. You know, we tell our kids that violence is not an acceptable way to do it. We tell them early on in school. All of a sudden, you become 18 and you start voting. Oh, apparently violence is okay all over the world. We got 800 bases all around the world, or 900 bases. We don't even know what we got because half of it is a secret. We got secret prisons around the world. Oh, we can't know what our own government is doing. No transparency. It's ridiculous. And I have no idea why the American, well, I do have an idea why they are. It's the propaganda. It's the manipulation. It's the political theater that's got everybody so divided against and blaming. You know, they're going to shift the blame, divert attention. This trip of Nancy Pelosi's to China, what is that all about? What's the purpose of that? What is she going to do? Nobody knows, right? Why is she going to Taiwan?
Exactly.
Well, you know, if it could sell a few more weapons, it'd be very profitable for some people, wouldn't it? It's exactly what Eisenhower told us. It's the military-industrial complex. It's for profit. It doesn't make us safer as a nation. we're not going to isolate in the world. We're going to engage with the world, but we're going to engage peacefully and respectfully. We're going to work with others. We don't want just our families to do well. We want families in every nation to do well. We're going to engage in a cooperative, respectful way. We're going to put our money not into military products, but into diplomatic corps. We're going to have exchange students, exchange cultures. We can do things a lot differently than we're doing them now, and it'll serve all of humanity. So we've got to think beyond our own borders, you know. So foreign policy under a JonStasevich president wouldn't look anything like what we've got now. I might have a Department of Peace. Change the darn name. Okay. Yeah, we may maintain some military presence, but most of the dollars we invest, we're going to invest in our families. We're going to, in the schools. The schools should be the center. They are the center of the community. That's where we send our kids. Our kids are our crown jewels, right? We send them there. We should have social workers there. We should have healthcare workers there. So the kid is a canary in a coal mine. When a family isn't functioning properly, it shows up in the kid. It shows up at the school. The teachers know it. They can see a kid not performing. When a kid doesn't perform, we don't just pass them along or ignore them. We get the right people involved, whether it requires social workers. Maybe we have to go into the family and work with the family. What's going on in your family that's causing such dysfunction, that's harming your child? No person wants to do that. So we can invest our dollars in helping ourselves, our families. And when we have all of our families that are healthy and happy, they're going to be productive. We're all going to be prosperous. We're all going to be productive. That's how you make things work. Now, we all know this if you were to sit down one-on-one and talk to people. But somehow, once you get into the political arena, people lose their minds. And they vote against their own interests. But I think I think so. Another part of my strategy is going to people like you. You noticed online that I kept saying to you, hey, why don't you interview an independent, you know? And you thankfully stepped up and said, and you are the only one that has so far, I'm here, I'll do it, you know? And I thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you to go to other independent people, other people you talk to, and share my message and say, you know what? You should give John a voice.
That's right.
You propose, you want change. You talk about change. You got to put your money where your mouth is. Here's a guy that wants to change. You may not like the option, but give him the voice and let the people decide.
Yes. I'm glad that you mentioned that because it was upsetting to me. And this has been going on for a while. And those of us at Revolutionary Blackout Network, we've mentioned this as well, is that if you're only bringing on these progressive candidates that are running through the Democratic Party, but you're ignoring someone like Delilah, who's running for governor in Texas, by the way, who's a better option than Beto or Governor Abbott, who's running as a Green, or you're ignoring people like Matthew Ho, or they're ignoring people like you. This is not a fair system here. We already criticize, mainstream media for their bias, for them being, cruel to progressives, for them smearing progressives, and also third-party candidates. They heavily smear them as well, or they ignore them altogether. Independent media is supposed to be different. So to me, it doesn't matter whether or not they agree with the strategy of putting a third-party candidate through. Whether you agree with them or not, you should still feel comfortable to have someone come onto your show that you may disagree with, and they should still give you the platform. And although like my show is growing, but there are people out there that have like millions of subscribers, hundreds and thousands of subscribers. And if they're not bringing these third party or independent candidates on, they should be ashamed of themselves because they know they can introduce them to a lot more people.
I went on the George Galloway show. I called in. He committed to interviewing me. Now I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. I'm going to push on him. Maybe not this week, but soon. I support, let me read a list of some of the people that I'm inspired by, that I follow. If you think about science, I think about Lawrence Krauss, who I already mentioned, Michio Kaku, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Feynman, who's dead, but I still love the science, Sean Carroll. There's a group. If I think about economics, I think about Richard Wolff. I think about Michael Hudson, Jeffrey Sachs, Ray Dalio. So I've taken the time. If I think about science, I also think about virology. Vincent Racconello. You can get his graduate course online on YouTube. I went through his graduate course. I understand more about virology now than I did when I worked as a nurse.
Wow.
If I think about foreign policy, I think about guys like John Mearsheimer, who told us that Ukraine was our fault. This is not a guy that's anti-American, for Christ's sakes. He's been involved in foreign policy forever. Even Henry Kissinger knew that this was an avoidable war.
Yep.
But you know what? It's a profitable war. Not only profitable for American oligarchs, but for Russian oligarchs as well. But, for the let's face it, the oligarchs don't have nations. They own the world. So this class war goes way beyond our nations. These people all work together. Our capitalists are all invested in China, aren't they?
That's right.
Yes. So that's why, and the problems that we face environmentally, you can't nationally come up with a solution. You need a Manhattan type project. You bring the best scientists in the world together and you come up with solutions for clean energy systems. And I can tell you that nuclear power is going to be a big part of it because of the energy density that's involved in it. Much safer, much cleaner than the old technology. And we're soon going to be getting to, fusion. The old reactors are fission reactors. But probably by mid-century, we'll have fusion probably nailed down. But we need a Manhattan project. We developed the atomic bomb to destroy life. We can certainly put together our best scientists and our best brains to figure out how to save life, can't we, in our planet? And our environment impacts all of us.
That's right.
So there's another reason for cooperation, for going beyond and working collaboratively and cooperatively with the world. And we have to engage the world that way. So I'm asking American people, the people on the left that are now voting green, yes, here's the deal I'd like to make with them. I will support all third-party candidates, all independent candidates, anyone except a major party candidate, even the major party candidates that call themselves progressives. I wouldn't support them because they joined an organization that's corrupt, right? I mean, okay, I'm going to reform the mafia. I think I'll join the mafia, right? Yeah. So here's the deal. If you were going to vote for the Green Party, if you were going to vote for the People's Party, if you were going to vote, go ahead, down ballot. But let's get the White House. Let's unite the American people and get the top political spot for the people. Give up that one, that one vote. Don't go with your party. Even though you love the Green Party, I love the Green Party. I went with Jill Stein. But it isn't effective, and you know in your heart it won't be effective again in 2024. Because the left is fragmented. The American people as a whole are fragmented, and that's their plan. They love it that way. That's why an independent is probably the only type of presidential candidate that can actually unite everybody. It's the one spot. And it's the one spot where you actually have real power. You got veto power. You can put Congress back on their heels. And for those Congress people who refuse to fall in line with the people's agenda, having the bully pulpit, you can organize. You can go after them. You can remove them through recall campaigns or through primary campaigns. But we can get rid of them. Okay? So you need an activist president to clean up Congress, to get the money out of politics. And I would challenge every single person in Congress to sign a bill to make public elections the only way to fund our political process. Get all special, because once we get special interest money out, now we're closer to democracy. And then we can work on cleaning up the election system, right? There may be a lot of people in Congress who in their heart really want to do the right thing, but they're forced to dial for the dollars. They're forced not to work. I'm expecting that when I get there, I don't blame individuals because they have to function within the system. Even the oligarchs, even the capitalists, they have to function within the system. They just happen to be good at it, okay? It doesn't mean they're good leaders. It doesn't mean that they're good for society. They're just good at making money, right? I don't blame them. It's the system. The system is the problem. What the American people need to do is unite to change the system. We're not going to blame one another. I'm not going to blame congressmen who've made bad decisions. Maybe they had to. Maybe they were forced to. Maybe they felt pressured. Maybe some legitimately are just, don't care about others. Okay. But those we will get out of office. We'll root them out.
I have to ask, in reference to, so police brutality has been a big one the past, I would say, well, since like George Floyd, but it's been an issue before then, but it definitely escalated after George Floyd. What is your take on police brutality? What do you think should happen there? Because I know the Democratic Party, and this is my, reasoning for other people when they ask me like, well, how can you not vote Democrat? The really big reason besides the money is the fact that the Democratic Party is also giving the police more money, just like the Republicans did. And I don't think that we need to give police more money. I think we need to take money away from the police because they're not using their power in an effective way. What's your position on police brutality?
I grew up at a time when Andy Griffith was the police, not Darth Vader.
Oh.
Yeah, big difference, right? That's when police were there to serve. I grew up in a town on a police car. You know what it said? Here to serve. So, again, the system is the problem. These are people. I've got a sheriff down the street as part of my campaign, and he's as frustrated as everybody else is. His life is in danger every day he leaves the house, right? The system is so broken. It's so broken. So the police don't have to be against the people. I certainly think that there's way too much funding that goes into the police. I would like to see a local service force. Maybe policing is a small part of it. I'd like to see psychologists, psychiatrists. I'd like to see, that kind of part of the whole social services network. Because in order to have healthy, productive people, you need all of it to come together. You need the education. So you can't have just the best education system in the world and ignore policing. You can't have or you can't have, the best healthcare system in the world and ignore education. You can't ignore the dysfunctional economic system and have the best education and healthcare. You need it all. So, having worked in the computer industry, there was a time when they had what they call best of breed products. So you might have a security system. Let's say you may have accounts receivable system or you have accounts payable system. Well, we got the best system in the entire world, the best accounts payable. But the corporate executives, the data that came out of these disparate systems was inconsistent. They couldn't run their business. So there was something called integration that happened. So integrating the systems, you had a suite of products sitting over a database, like accounts receivable, accounts payable. So in the database, the name, the customer John C. Smith is in the database. And whether it's accounts receivable pulling up or HR system pulling up or warehousing system pulling it up, it always comes up John C. Smith. In the old days, accounts payable might have them in the system as John Smith. Another one might have them as J. Smith. And so you could never figure out what the heck's going on in my business. So we had to integrate to make it functional, to make it effective, the software systems. We have to do the same thing with social services. In order to have, as I talked about, integrating in health, you need mental, dental, all of it. You can't just have the best mental health care system in the world if you're not taking care of physical health care in a preventative way. That's another thing. We could save a ton of money with preventative medicine. So there's so many issues. But once we get the money out of politics, I would take I don't know who I would appoint for or want as head of Health and Human Services, as an example. But it's going to be somebody who will go and get the best minds in Health and Human Services together to put together, and they'll work in conjunction with someone from Education, Department of Education, and they'll work in conjunction, and they'll come up with a comprehensive solution to social issues. We're going to give people what they need. We're going to invest where the need is greatest. So if we have a community in America where children are performing, then they're not going to grow up to be productive, healthy citizens. They aren't going to add to the general welfare and prosperity. That's where we're going to invest. The best investment you can make, whether you're a company, whether you're a father, or whether you're a leader of a nation, is in your people. Our people are our strength. And diversity in your population adds to that strength. Diversity is a strength. It's not a weakness. The way our political system and economic system today works is they divide us along those lines. They make it look like a weakness. But in fact, diversity is our strength because you get so many different perspectives. You get better solutions. But an integrated approach to human health and human services, that's what we need.
Gotcha. One more question I do have for you as well, and this kind of goes along with policing. I always, tell my audience that we keep hearing that the crime rate is increasing, but I always connect crime to poverty because the majority of crime is poverty driven.
Absolutely.
How do you feel about, or do you have a plan, or I guess like in mind, to address the poverty situation, especially since more people are losing their homes? The homeless rate has increased. I know, especially here in Boston, it's happening across the country. I'm seeing tent communities pop up in Austin, Texas as well.
Right.
What would you implement in reference to the poverty situation in this country?
Well, like Finland, I think we look around the world and we see that different countries have tried different solutions. I think, in Finland that it's housing first. So for homelessness, they don't wait for them to go through a bunch of hurdles. Oh, you got to get off the drugs and you have to do. No, you put them in the house first and then you provide the services, right? So again, it's that integrated approach. See, the best way to solve a problem, if you take these problems one at a time, policing as if it weren't connected to human health or poverty or all of these, they're all connected. You can't just attack one. You have to have a comprehensive program to address human need. So people are conditioned. We're all conditioned. Some are conditioned and it happens to match the circumstances of our system, and within the system they're successful. Others' conditioning doesn't match what it takes to be successful. It doesn't mean they're not good human beings. It doesn't mean they're not worthy or capable. They are. The conditioning just hasn't matched. That's teaching is all about conditioning a person. Parenting is about conditioning an individual, right? And you condition them with love. So there's psychologists like Gabor Mate. I don't know if you know who he is, but you do. So, his approach to human health, he understands human conditioning. He's looked at all diseases, and it goes back to early trauma. So when you have a human being and you fail to deliver the basic needs that human being, either mentally or physically, those problems are going to show up later in life. And they're going to multiply. So the best way to solve a problem is to go to the root cause, the source. That's the most effective and the most efficient way. It's the least expensive. So in healthcare, the way you solve the healthcare problems is by investing in preventive healthcare early in life and through the lifespan. Okay. We know this in medicine, but the system is a profit-driven capitalist system. And so people that even know this within the system are forced to work the way the system works and present pharmaceuticals as a solution when really the problem could have been solved way back here with preventive medicine, right? And so that's a very expensive. You wait until it's a big problem. It costs a lot of money. Once a person is mentally destabilized boy, it takes a lot of energy and money to get them back on track, to make them healthy, productive, so they can not only support themselves and have a high quality life, but they can contribute back to the common good, to society, so that we all prosper, right? So, it sounds like I'm skirting the question, but I'm not. I'm trying to show you how we need a comprehensive program that is based on scientific research. It's not that we don't know how to raise healthy, productive people. I've done it. It isn't that, I know how to succeed in the capitalist system. I've done that too. But I also have seen all the failures. I can tell you, when I was laid off from Ford, I was used to a big paycheck. I had a big mortgage. I had kids. They had needs. They were in school. I had to put food on the table. And I'm out collecting newspapers just to stay alive. That's insanity. No civil society in their right mind is going to do that to their citizens. You want people, the way you develop esteem is not through charity. You give them the ability to make it on their own. That's how you build self-esteem. And we want our people to have high self-esteem, high worth. Because when they have high worth for themselves, they'll have high worth for others. That makes sense?
It makes sense to me. But John, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm actually going to reach out to Kit from, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hardlands Media, but I'll reach out to Kit from Hardlands Media and some other folks as well to see if they can get you on, because I think more people need to hear your message there. But before you go, can you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Well, hopefully. Okay, so you see the spelling of my name is right there. It's Jon Stasevich. So because my name is kind of long, my website is JonStase. So John Stacy, and then for President, FOR, President 2024.com. That's my website.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much, and good luck. But again, yeah, I'm going to reach out to other comrades that I have to see if they can get you on as well. But thank you so much for coming on.
Well, I hope that you'll make me a regular, because, I don't know, how long have we been on together so far?
Like a little over an hour.
Okay. I could talk about any single one of these things for more than an hour. Foreign policy, domestic policy, anything, There's many things we haven't tackled. So I hope that we can follow up again later as well.
Yeah, definitely. Come back anytime. Just let me know. You have my email, so that's the best way to reach me, because gosh, I'm terrible with Twitter DMs. I try, but I'm proud
to be a Patreon member now of your show, and I'm going to be following you from now on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.